Today I'm going to give you a simple way to win at poker. This works almost every single time and it doesn't require any cheating at all. Let's jump into it. Alright guys, so the simple way to start winning at poker consistently is to start playing your draws better. This is one of the biggest trouble spots for my students in particular, and today we're going to talk all about flush draws. I'm going to walk you through the math. I'm going to show you how to assess the strength of your flush draw. We're going to talk about that in just 1 second here. In fact, I am also going to show you how to bluff your flush draw on the river when you inevitably miss it 2 out of 3 times. You're going to learn all the math, all the odds, and how to play this crucial hand in all situations. So let's jump into it. So guys, first things first, many beginners lose all their money chasing bad flush draws. You've probably seen them at the poker tables. These are the players always complaining about their bad luck, and there's one specific reason why, and that is you need to understand how to judge the value of your flush draw. So let's first off talk about a good flush draw. You have ace 4 of hearts and the flop comes down with the 9 of hearts, king of hearts, and 5 of clubs. Guys, this is a beautiful situation because you have what we call the nut flush draw. And what I mean by that is the nuts in poker is a slang term for the best hand possible or one of the best hands possible. And in this situation, since we have the ace of hearts in our hand, we are literally chasing the best flush possible, barring the unbelievably unlikely situation where there is a straight flush. Ace 4 of hearts is the literal nut flush draw on this board. Now let's talk about a bad flush draw by comparison, and that will be a situation where you have the 3 of hearts, deuce of hearts on the exact same flop of the 9 of hearts, king of hearts, and 5 of clubs. Guys, if the heart comes on the turn or river, and I guess I should actually explain what a flush is for those of you guys who are brand new to the game of poker. A flush in poker is 5 cards all of the same suit. So we have 2 hearts in our hand here. There's 2 hearts also on the flop. We are looking to catch another heart on the turn or river. Now guys, the problem is if you have the 3 deuce of hearts here, if the next heart comes on the turn or river, you are going to lose all of your money if anybody has any 2 hearts also in their hand. Essentially, you are drawing completely dead. There will be no card in the deck that you can catch to win the hand. So for example, if they've got a hand like 7-8 of hearts and it comes with the queen of hearts on the turn, you are going to have a flush with your 3 deuce of hearts, but they're going to have a higher flush with their 7-8 of hearts, and there is no card that you can catch to win the hand. Guys, this is the #1 way that amateurs misplay these hands, and the solution here, guys, is really simple, and that is to only chase flush draws when you have the ace, king, or queen, preferably of the suit of the flush draw you're chasing. In this situation, anybody who has the ace of hearts in their hand is chasing the best flush draw possible, and if you have the 3 and the 2 of hearts, you have the worst flush draw possible. Guys, bottom line, do not chase baby flush draws like this. You are begging to get flush over flushed. This is what amateurs do. Alright guys, let's move on to tip number 6 now and talk about some basic flush draw math. And what you guys need to know is that your odds of completing a flush if you flop a flush draw are roughly only around 35% or around 1 out of 3 odds. Not very good odds. And let me just break that down, by the way, quickly for you. I'm going to put the image on your screen right now of the flop, turn, and river. Once again, just for some of you complete beginners out there, the flop is the first 3 cards that the dealer puts in the middle on the board, which are called the community cards, which everyone uses to make the best 5-card hand in poker. The turn is the 4th card and the river is the 5th card. So what I'm saying here, guys, is that when you flop a flush draw on the flop, like we just talked about, your chances of completing your draw by the river, which is the 5th card, are only 35%. So therefore, we need to be getting the right pot odds in order to chase our draw. And by the way, guys, I'm going to give you more strategies to win with your flush draws coming up in the video. And basically, that's by raising your hand instead of passively calling. But let's just talk about the situation where you are chasing, aka calling, with a flush draw. So guys, basically, you want to have 3-to-1 pot odds or more. And I'm going to give you some more mental shortcuts, by the way, in just 1 second so you can quickly also calculate your pot odds. But basically, guys, let me give you an example here. The pot's $100. They bet $50. So there is a total of $150 in the pot. It is $50 for you to call. $150 divided by 50. Break out that old grade 9 math. You are getting 3-to-1 pot odds in this situation. All right, guys, so moving on to number 5 now, and let's talk about how to memorize these basic pot odds. And I'm going to talk about why these matter, by the way, in just a second. All right, so basically, guys, if they bet a quarter of the pot, so say pot's $100, they bet $25, you are getting 5-to-1. If they bet 1/3 of the pot, so say they bet $33 into $100, you are getting 4-to-1. You guys can see all the way down there. Basically, guys, if they bet half pot or less, you are getting the right pot odds. Remember, you want 3-to-1 or better. And now let me explain why that is so important. So guys, we already talked about how you're only going to hit your flush draw by the river around 35% of the time. So therefore, you want to have at least 3-to-1 or better that you're getting on your money in order to comfortably turn a profit, because we're going to miss our flush draw 2 out of 3 times, of course. So now let's talk about the situation where we want to price them out. So for example, you've got the ace of hearts, king of spades. Flop comes down with the king of clubs, 8 of diamonds, and 3 of diamonds. So there's a flush draw on this board. We don't have any diamond in our hand, but we know that they could potentially have a hand like the 5 of diamonds and 6 of diamonds. So how do we mathematically price this hand out? Well, once again, using a pot size of $100 for a nice round number, you want to bet $75 or more, because what this is going to do is that's going to give them 2.5-to-1 or 2-to-1 pot odds if you bet $100 at the pot, and this is going to mathematically price them out. They can still call, but they're making a mathematical mistake over the long run because we already know that 2 out of 3 times they're going to miss their flush draw. All right, guys, let's move on to tip number 4 now, and that is to help you understand that pot odds mean absolutely nothing if there are no implied odds. Now, without geeking out on mathematics anymore in this video, let's just talk about the basic common sense of drawing to a flush. Guys, the bottom line is you need to be able to win something in the 1 out of 3 situation that you actually hit your flush. So therefore, if you are on a short stack, for example, you've only got 20 big blinds or 40 big blinds, and what I mean by that, by the way, is you're playing, for example, in a cash game where the big blind is $2. If you had $40 in your stack, you would have 20 big blinds. $2 times 20, $40. So guys, you do not want to chase a flush draw when you have a short stack like this, $40, $80, for example, because you're not giving yourself enough implied odds. You're not going to be able to win enough to make up for all the times that you miss your flush draw. And once again, I'm going to give you some ways to win with your flush draws by bluffing in just a second here, but I just want to make sure you guys understand the basic math well for your flush draws. So guys, basically the rule of thumb here is you want to have 80 big blinds or more in order to chase your flush draws. By the way, I do talk about this in extensive detail in my Elite Poker Training University, 17 plus hours of advanced poker training, 50 plus cheat sheets, videos, all taught by myself as a 10 plus year professional poker player. Enrollment is open right now. There are entire videos on how to play your flush draws, straight draws, inside straight draws, and more. I will leave a link to that in the description below. But guys, as I say in the course, you want them to have a starting stack size of 80 big blinds or more, and you also, of course, want to have that amount as well, because that is going to mean you're going to have something to win when you actually hit your flush draw. I would actually always suggest buying in for 100 big blinds or more. And guys, if you're playing in a tournament, it goes without saying that if you're in the late stages of the tournament where the stack sizes are typically 20 big blinds, 40 big blinds, you can't chase your flush draw in those situations because you just don't have enough stack behind to win. So let me give you a concrete example once again. In a $1, $2 cash game, they should have a minimum of $160 in their stack if you're going to chase your flush draw. And you should, of course, have the same. Guys, give yourself some implied odds. Give yourself something to actually win when you chase your flush draw, and you're going to have a lot more success. All right, guys, now let's move on to tip number 3 now and talk about how to give yourself more ways to win with your flush draw. So we already talked about all the basic math and all that good stuff, but there's more than one way to win your flush draw. You don't have to actually hit your flush draw. This is the beautiful thing about poker. You can bluff them out of the pot. So guys, you don't want to just call with flush draws. You want to raise sometimes instead. I have literally made an entire career out of doing this, especially by targeting the right players, and those are the weak, tight regulars. In particular, I've made multiple videos here recently on the channel talking about how to bluff those players, but let me give you a concrete example here. You call on the button with the jack of diamonds, 10 of diamonds, versus a tight and aggressive player in this situation, so a similar player type, one of the better player types actually in today's games. Flop comes down with the 8 of diamonds, 5 of clubs, and king of diamonds, so this is a good spot for us, guys. We have flopped the flush draw. We also have a backdoor straight draw here. If it came, for example, with a queen on the turn and an ace on the river, we would make a straight as well. But guys, in a situation like this, when this tag player makes their continuation bet here, when they bet into me on the flop, I am very frequently going to be raising in a situation like this. I talk about exact frequencies in all of my books and also in my free poker cheat sheet, which I'll leave a link to that in the description below, because frequencies are very important, guys, in poker. And in a situation like this, it's roughly going to be 50-50 for me between making the call and raising. Once again, guys, you always want to be giving yourself multiple ways to win in poker. The reason why so many amateurs do not have success these days is because they only call with their flush draw. And we already talked about the math. You're only going to hit your flush draw 1 out of 3 times, but by raising 50% of the time in a situation like this, you're giving yourself 2 ways to win the pot. You can also make this player fold their hand right now, and we can simply take it down with jack high. And guys, the beautiful thing about semi-bluffing, which is what we're doing here, is you don't lose any equity. You still have the exact same odds to make your flush draw on either the turn or river. So guys, bottom line, all of today's elite level poker players understand that in order to play your flush draws profitably, you have to apply some pressure by semi-bluffing against the right player types in situations like this. All right, guys, let's move on to tip number 2 now, and that is to never miss value. So guys, if you hit your flush draw, please do not check raise versus a passive player. This is literally the #1 mistake that I still see people making these days, and that is because they will just check back. Guys, you need to understand player types. We just talked about an aggressive player in the previous hand, but versus a passive player, I will never check raise because I know they're just going to pot control check back, and it's going to artificially keep the size of the pot low, which is not what I want when I've made my flush. Let me give you an example. Once again, you call in the big blind with the ace of spades, 3 of spades. So we're going to be chasing the nut flush in this situation. Always a good spot. And we're versus a nit in this hand. This is one of my 5 major player types, and this player is extremely tight and also extremely passive. So the flop comes down with the 10 of spades, 6 of clubs, and queen of spades. You check call. This is a pretty typical spot for me. We just talked about check raising. I will check raise a full 50% of the time here. But guys, once again, frequencies, this is the 50% of the time we're just calling. Turn comes down with our money card, the king of spades. Guys, you want to be leading here, aka making a bet. You do not want to check here because the passive player that we are up against in this hand is simply going to check behind with all of their hands, like a 10 jack, a queen jack, an ace 6, all of these hands that have middle pair now. A weak, scared player type like this is literally only going to bet again on the very small amount of the time when they have some sort of huge hand like king queen, for example. Maybe they hit the straight with ace jack, and we all know how rarely that happens. So guys, bottom line, do not cost yourself money here versus a passive player. They're just gonna check back. Don't get tricky, just make a big bet here. That's the way to win a big pot. Sometimes you need to build the pot in order to win a big pot, especially for all you guys playing in small stakes games. I talk about that specifically in my first book, Crushing the Micro Stakes. Let's move on to my #1 tip now, guys, for playing your flush draws, and that of course is to bluff on the river when you miss. So guys, this is the real crowning achievement of how to play your flush draws. When I finally learned this trick, this literally took my results to the next level. That's why you got the trophy there on your screen. Guys, you can't just give up when you miss your flush draw. We already talked about the math. You're going to miss 65% of the time by the river, and you can't just give up every single time and wave the white flag. You got to fight for some pots. So let's talk about another example here. You call on the button pre-flop with your 9-8 of hearts versus a weak regular. So super typical spot. We're going to try to outplay this player with the benefit of position, and by the river, the board reads the jack of hearts, 7 of spades, 4 of hearts, 3 of clubs and king of spades. So we're going to assume you're up against one of these weak regulars in this hand, and that is a typical player you're going to play against on a day in, day out basis. And this is the kind of player who doesn't like to stick a lot of money in the middle without a really strong hand. We got a really solid scare card on the river there with a king. So if this player was holding on, for example, with a hand like Jack 10 or maybe a 9-7 or something like that, they're not going to be so happy by the river here. And that is why I am going to be making a big bluff here. I will typically bet around 75% of the pot. So if the pot's $100, I'm betting $75. And there are three reasons why that I'm going to break down for you quickly here. Number one, the most obvious thing, as always, is can we actually win the pot here if we check behind? We've got 9 high, guys. We're not beating anything. Literally every single hand in this player's range is going to beat us, including ace high. If this player literally has ace deuce, they're going to beat us. If this player has queen 8 for some reason, they're going to beat us. So guys, we can't win by checking behind. So that is always the most important thing when I'm looking if I want to bluff in a situation is can I actually win by checking? And the answer is clearly no in this situation. The other thing, as we already talked about, point number 2 is the river card. The king is an excellent scare card. We already touched on that. And finally, it is the player type, weak, regular. You guys, you want to target players, if you're playing online poker, you want to target players with a went to showdown percentage of 25% or less. I use this on my HUD as an online professional poker player. I will include the link to the HUD that I use in the description below. But guys, basically what this tells me is that is a weak, risk-averse player type who doesn't like to go to a showdown without a really strong hand. So I especially want to try to bluff those players. All right, guys, like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. And if you want to know my entire strategy to win at poker fast without cheating, make sure you grab a copy of my free poker cheat sheet. That'll be the top link in the description below. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. All the best to the poker tables, unless you're on mine.